Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi ta'ala wa barakatuh. Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen. Wassalatu wassalamu ala Sayyidina Muhammad wa ala alihi wa ashabihi at-tayyibin at-tahirin. I bear witness that no one deserves to be worshipped except Allah Ta'ala, the one who has no partner and no similar, the one who has no length and no width and no depth and no perimeter, the one who is not a volume and is not in a place. And how could he be in a place when he existed before time and space? He created everything except himself, including you and your actions. Nothing occurs except by his will, both good and bad, he destined to happen. He speaks without sound, letter, or language, not Arabic, Hebrew, nor Korean. He's not light. He's not a spirit. He has nothing in common with human beings. He's not in the direction of up, down, right, left, front, nor back. And whatever you imagine in your mind, Allah is different than that. And I bear witness that our noble, unrivaled master, Muhammad, sallallahu alayhi wasallam, is the slave of Allah, his final messenger, and the best of all of God's creations. May Allah unite us with him in paradise and grant us a drink from his basin. And may Allah increase us in patience, humility, knowledge, and comprehension, and help us to put our knowledge into practice, and grant us all sincere intentions. Ameen. We're continuing in the book, Al-Muqaddimah Al-Hadramiya, the Hadrami introduction, written by the Allama Bafadl Rahimahullah. We've made it to page 12 in the book. Page 12. At the bottom, in the section which is called in the book, Cleansing Oneself. This section deals with istinja, something that's called in Arabic istinja. So, allow me to write real quick. Istinja. Okay. So our topic today is this, istinja. Inshallah, that's big enough for y'all to see. Now, what I'm going to do, I think, is I'm just going to talk through istinja first here with the presentation, and then I'll read through it in the book afterwards. I think that might make the most sense. So just bear with me while I do that. So istinja, there are two ways to do istinja. You can do istinja with water, or you can do istinja with stones. Or the like. So you can do istinja with stones. And when we say with stones, we mean or something that's like a stone. Okay? We're saying it's a stone or something like a stone. Okay. Now, if you want to do istinja with water, which is, of the two choices, the better choice is to use water. If you want to do istinja with water, the rules are that you must wash the affected area with flowing water until the following has been completely removed. So the rules for washing with water are what? that you wash until the following has been completely removed. What are the following? Number one, the mass of the najis filth. And the second thing you have to remove are the traces of the najis filth. What are the traces? The traces are the color, the smell, and the taste. Okay, this is what's meant when we say removing the traces. We mean that the color of the filth has been removed, the smell of the filth has been removed, and the taste of the filth has been removed. Okay? So let's go back to the beginning. The topic of our discussion today is istinja. Istinja means cleaning yourself after you go to the bathroom. Okay, after you urinate or defecate or something similar. As you'll see when we read in the book, istinja is an obligation whenever something moist comes out of one of those two exits. Okay, and when something moist comes out of one of the two exits, you have your choice of how to clean it. You can choose to use water. And if you use water, the rule is what? You need to have the water flow over the area, any area that the filth touched, until the filth itself is gone and the traces of it are also gone, meaning the color of it is gone, the smell of it is gone, and the taste of it is gone. Okay, that's method number one, using water. If you use stones, there's sort of like two topics that we need to discuss. One topic is what is like a stone? So when we say using a stone or something that's like a stone, first topic we need to ask ourselves is, what counts as being like a stone? And the second topic we need to ask ourselves is, how do you actually do it? What's the process? How do you use a stone? Okay, so these are the two subjects, or the two, if we're going to talk about doing istinja with stones, these are the two things we need to talk about. So first off, what things count as stones? A thing counts as a stone if it meets the following criteria. Number one, it's pure. I'll just say pure. All right, it's pure. It's solid. It's uprooting. It's dry. It's non-respectable. Okay? If the thing that you want to use has these 5 criteria, then that means the thing you're using counts as a stone. It means it falls under this category of making istinja with stones. So a stone, among the qualities of a stone is that it's pure. Like stones are not, excuse me, stones are not made out of something filthy like feces. Okay, so you should understand from this criteria that it is not sufficient. It's not a valid istinja if you were, say, out in the desert and you found some camel poop, and camel poop is hard like a rock. If you found some camel poop and decided to use that to clean yourself, you would not have a valid istinja if that's all that you did. If you just simply use camel poop to do your istinja, it would not be sufficient, because one of the criteria of something being like a stone is that it be pure. And camel poop is not pure. Camel poop is filthy, just like feces is always filthy. The second criteria is that it be solid. So in order for something to count as a stone, it has to be like one solid object. Okay, this is why it would not be valid for you to pick up a handful of sand and try to clean yourself with a handful of sand, because that's not one solid object. That's like many small objects. And so it's not like a stone. The third criteria is that it be uprooting. When we say uprooting, what we mean is when you wipe with the stone, you actually pull up the thing that you're wiping. So like if you imagine that there's some feces on a surface, say on a table, if you took a stone and you wiped the feces with the stone, you'd find that the stone would pull the feces off of the table and the feces would now be on the stone. So it lifts it up off of the table. This is a quality of stones. And so if you want to use something for istinja, in order for it to count as a stone, it needs to have that same quality, where if you wipe with it, it lifts up the poop. Okay, this is why it would not be sufficient for you to use a glass bottle for istinja. Because if you wipe with a glass bottle, it's not going to lift the poop up. It's just going to spread the poop around. Because glass, smooth things like glass are not uprooting. Also, in order for it to count as a stone, it needs to be dry. So you can't use something wet as a stone. And the fifth one is that whatever you use as a stone, it has to be something that, according to the religion, does not demand your respect. So you cannot use anything that has one of the names of Allah written on it, or anything that has one of the names of the prophets written on it, or anything that has Islamic knowledge on it. And when I say Islamic knowledge, I mean knowledge that's directly Islamic, such as tafsir and hadith and fiqh and aqidah, for example. But I also mean the things that are often studied along with religious knowledge, like the things that are the tools for religious knowledge, such as nahu, like Arabic syntax, or mantiq, the study of formal logic. These are things that the scholars also need to study in order to achieve mastery of the Islamic sciences. So it's respectable in that sense. You can't use anything that the religion declares to be respectable. And that includes food. Okay, the deen considers food to be respectable. So you cannot do istinja with a leaf of lettuce or a piece of bread. You also may not do istinja with bones, because bones, even though humans don't typically eat them, bones are food for other creations. Okay, so we don't do istinja with bones either, because they are respectable. Excuse me just for one moment, please. Assalamu alaikum. Yeah, so the things that meet these criteria count as a stone. If the thing you intend to wipe yourself with, if it doesn't meet these 5 criteria, that means it does not count as a stone, and that means it by itself will not be sufficient for a valid istinja. As for how to use a stone, it's quite simple. You wipe the affected area 3 or more times, making sure that you have removed the following. Number 1, the mass of the najis filth. The traces do not have to be removed. Okay, this is a summary of what you need to know about istinja. Okay, you have 2 choices. You can do it with water or you can do it with stones. Doing it with water is very simple. You just pour the water onto the affected area in such a way that the water flows over the affected area. And you continue pouring, and you can wipe as you pour until the filth itself is gone and the traces of it are also gone. When you use stones, you wipe the area until the filth is gone, but it's okay if the traces have not all been removed. Like if the color, taste, and smell remain, then your istinja is still valid because a stone is not going to remove those things. Okay, you just need to make sure the filth itself is removed. Okay, and you can do that using stones or something that's like a stone. What's something that's like a stone? Anything that's pure, solid, uprooting, dry, and not religiously respectable. Okay, having reviewed that, let's read the chapter. The author, may Allah have mercy on him, says, "It is obligatory to clean oneself from every moist thing which leaves any of the 2 exits." So if something moist comes out of your front exit or your back exit, if something moist comes out of your front exit or your back exit, you have a religious obligation to clean that. Okay? But this obligation only kicks in if it is something that is moist. Okay? This means you are not obligated to make istinja if you break wind, because that's just gas. Okay? And if you imagine that something comes out of you that's completely dry, like I've never heard of this happening to a human, but if you imagine that, a person makes a bowel movement and it comes out absolutely completely dry, well, then in that case, you would not need to make istinja afterwards. Istinja is something that's done if what comes out is moist, like in the case of urine or feces or blood or, the pre-seminal fluid that sometimes might come out when a person gets sexually excited. These things, because they're moist, istinja is obligatory to be done. However, it's worth noting that istinja doesn't have to be done right away. Okay, it's not the case that when you go to the bathroom, you have to clean yourself right away. All right, that's not true. Okay, it's an obligation for you to clean yourself. Why? Because sooner or later, you're going to have to make salat. And one of the conditions of a valid salat is that you be clear of both hadath and najas. So this najas filth which came out of you, you're going to have to clean yourself from it in order to make salat. So when do you need to do istinja then? Before you make salat. It doesn't necessarily have to be right away. Also, you may need to do it even earlier than that, like even before you want to make salat, if you're in a situation where you fear you might contaminate your body or your clothing or contaminate something with that filth that came out, that filth that's like on your body still, that you haven't cleaned off yet. If you fear that you're going to contaminate something with it, such as your clothes or another part of your body, well, then in that case, you need to make istinja so that you don't contaminate something else. All right. It says, it is obligatory to clean oneself from every moist thing which leaves any of the two exits. With water, that's option one. You have the option to clean yourself with water. Stones, which is option two. And it says, or pure, unrespected, solid, capable of cleansing. What he means here is a stone or that. Okay, so this it's not like you have three choices here. You can use a stone, or the thing that meets these criteria is the same as using a stone. And the criteria that he mentions here is that it be pure. That's one of the five. That it be unrespected. That's one of the five. That it be solid. That's also one of the five. And he says here capable of cleansing, but when he says capable of cleansing, he's translating the Arabic word qali', which means that it is uprooting. Okay, when he says capable of cleansing, what he really means is that it's uprooting. If you wipe with it, it lifts up the filth. Okay, so he mentions here 4 of the 5 criteria, and he's going to mention a little bit later that also dryness is also one of the conditions. He's going to mention it later in the chapter, inshallah. So he's saying here you have this obligation, and you have 2 ways to do it, with water or with stones. Then he says, it is recommended to combine both. So I mentioned earlier that you have these 2 choices. You can use water or you can use stones. And I said, of the 2 choices, the best choice is to use the water. Why is it better to use water than to use stones? Okay, and keep in mind, when I say stones, I mean, or anything that meets these criteria. Toilet paper, for example, is like a stone because it meets these 5 criteria. Okay, so is it better to use water or is it better to use toilet paper?
Yeah.
The answer is it's better to use water, because when you use water, you're going to remove the filth as well as the traces of the filth. Whereas if you use stones or toilet paper, you can remove the filth, but you're not going to remove the traces. Okay, so you're actually more clean if you use water than if you use stones. That's why water is better than stones. But what's better still, what's better, even better than using water, is if you use both. If you clean yourself with stones first, and then after you clean yourself with stones, then use water. That's the best way to do istinja. Why is that way better? Because if you use the stones first, you will remove all of the filth without needing to actually touch it. So your hand won't touch the filth. The stones will touch the filth. And once you've removed the filth with stones without having to touch it, then your second step would be to use the water, which will then remove the remaining traces, the color, taste, and smell. So you end up being completely clean and also without needing to touch the filth yourself. That is the best way. That's why he says here, it is recommended to combine both, meaning to use water and to use a solid. It says, even if it is a solid which has become impure, and even if it is less than 3 wipes. Okay, because we said, how do you use a stone? You have to wipe 3 or more times. Right? You have to wipe 3 or more times. In order for wiping with the stone to be sufficient by itself. And we said in order for it to be like a stone, it has to meet these 5 criteria. And in order for using a stone to be sufficient by itself, all those criteria must be met. But if you're going to use a stone and also use water, well, then actually, it's okay if some of these 5 criteria are not met. And it's also okay if you wiped fewer than 3 times. Why? Because in the end, you're going to use water. And water is sufficient even if you didn't wipe any times with a stone. And even if you didn't have anything, even if you didn't meet any of the 5 criteria, water by itself would have been sufficient anyway. So if you want to, before using the water, use some stones to lighten the amount of filth that's there, the water will still be sufficient. Okay, so in the end, your istinja will be valid because of the water, and therefore, like, the stones don't necessarily have to fit all of the criteria. Okay, they don't necessarily have to fit every single criterion because you're not relying on the stones for your purification. You're relying on the water. Excuse me 1 second.
Stay hard.
Okay, thank you. Assalamu alaikum. So we're saying that, yes. So the recommendation is to use both water and stones, and meaning you do the stones first and the water second. If you use that particular method, then it's okay if some of the criteria of the stones are not met because you're ultimately relying on the water for the validity of your istinja. So the stones are just helping to reduce the filth that the water needs to clean. And so it's fine. It says, if one is to use one of them, then water is better. So yes, if you're not going to use both stones and water, but only one or the other, well, then water is the better choice. And like we said, that's because water will remove the filth as well as the traces, whereas the stone will remove the filth and will not remove the traces. It says the condition for using a stone, and again, when we say a stone, we mean a stone or something like a stone, like toilet paper. Anything that meets the 5 criteria count as a stone. The condition for using a stone is that the impurity hasn't dried. So you need to use the stone before this filth that came out of your body has dried up. Because let's say you go to urinate. If urine comes out and it, some of it is on your body and you didn't clean it right away, but instead you let it dry, well, then in that case, you have to use water to clean. You can't use a stone anymore once the thing that came out of your body has dried. And that's true for urine, it's true for blood, it's true for feces. If the thing that came out and is soiling your body, once that thing dries up, you can only use water to clean it at that point. You don't have the option anymore to use a stone. So that's criteria number one for using a stone. The filth itself has not yet dried. It says, nor has it moved. So the second criteria is that this filth, which came out of your body, but instead of like leaving your body, it's still on your body. Like some urine that instead of falling into the toilet, it's still on your skin. Or feces that instead of falling into your body, it's there on your butt. Okay, this stuff that normally we would wipe away, we're saying you can only wipe it as long as this stuff hasn't moved again after settling in place. So when you poop, for example, most of the poop will exit your body and fall into the toilet or into wherever you're going to the bathroom at. But very often there'll be some that is there on your skin, like on the exit where it came out. You know, the stuff that when you wipe, you wipe a little, you find that there's some there. When you wipe with the toilet paper, you'll see that the toilet paper is not clean when you wipe, that you wiped something off of your body. That filth that's there, how did it get there? It was inside your body, then it came out of your body. And once it was on the outside of your body, it might move a little bit, and then it will like find a place where it settles, where it stops moving. Okay, once it reaches that point where it stops moving, if it moves again after that, then you're no longer allowed to use stones and you have to use water. Might be a better example if we use the urine example. If a person urinates, the urine will mostly go away from your body. Some of it will stay on the body and just kind of, roll a little bit on your skin. It might move a short distance from the actual exit, and it might, roll on your skin for, I don't know, a half an inch or something. That's fine. Once it stops moving, once it reaches a point where it stops moving, if it moves again after that, then you can't use stones. You have to use water. It says, or another impurity appeared. So another criterion that needs to be met in order for the stone to be sufficient. Number one, the filth hasn't dried. Number two, once it settled into place, it hasn't moved again. And the third condition is what? That another najis filth has not contacted it. Okay, it's not the case that some other filth came onto your body and touched the area that you were going to wipe. That's also a condition. And be careful, because when we say some other filth touched the area, that includes the case where the filth that just left your body bounced back. It's like if you're a man, for example, and you're standing up, peeing at the urinal, what sometimes happens is the urine hits the wall of the urinal, and a small drop of it will ricochet back. Once that urine exits your body and leaves, like it's not on your body anymore, if it ricochets back, it's now considered to be like a foreign impurity that landed on you. And that will make it so that you now cannot wipe with stones. You now have to clean with water because a foreign impurity landed on the area that you intended to wipe. It says the impurity shouldn't have moved over the area. Okay, what he means is beyond the area. It says over the area, but he means beyond the area. So when we say you have a front exit and a back exit, those exits are located in a place of the body that's within a certain area. So, for example, the rear exit, where the feces comes out, It's located between the butt cheeks in what we call the butt crack. All right. What is a butt crack exactly? It's that part of your body. It's that part of your body that when you squat down is visible, but when you stand up is not visible. Because when you stand up, the butt cheeks come together and cover the butt crack. But if you were to squat down, the butt cheeks would spread and the butt crack would become visible. That area, which disappears when you stand up straight, that area is considered to be the area where the exit is. So when feces comes out, if you get poop in the butt crack, then you can still wipe it with stones or toilet paper. But if the filth goes beyond that area, like if the filth reaches a part of your body that would be visible even if you were standing up straight, well, then that filth cannot be cleaned with stones. That filth can only be cleaned with water. Because the stones, there's a limit to where this particular rukhsa can be applied. It can only be applied in the area where the exit is. So the rear exit, the area for it is the butt crack. If your filth goes beyond the butt crack, water has to be used. As for the front exit, for men, the area that the front exit lies in is the head of the penis. Okay, so if urine comes out and it rolls and goes beyond the head of the penis, okay, if it rolls onto the shaft of the penis, well, then it's no longer sufficient for you to wipe with toilet paper. You have to use water because it's gone beyond the area where the exit is located. For women, they have an exit where their urine comes out. If the urine rolls and actually reaches the vagina itself, reaches the entrance that the husband uses, if the urine reaches that entrance, well, then the urine has gone beyond its exit area and water would need to be used because stones are not sufficient if the filth that came out has dried, or if it settled and then moved again, or if an outside filth touched the area. And similarly, stones are not sufficient if the filth moved beyond the exit area, which is what we just talked about. Again, the exit area for the rear exit is the butt cheek, the butt crack, what's between the butt cheeks. The exit area in front for men is the head of the penis, and the exit area in front for a woman is such that as long as the urine has not reached the entrance that the husband uses, then that urine is still within the area and toilet paper could be used. Once it reaches the exit the husband uses, then, I'm sorry, the entrance the husband uses, then at that point it's gone beyond the area and water must be used. He then says, and no water has touched it. So the last condition here is that it must be the case that no water touches the area that you intend to wipe. So this is the fifth condition here. So if you look at what I have on the screen, I put 5 conditions here: pure, solid, uprooting, dry, and non-respectable. He mentioned pure, solid, uprooting, and non-respectable earlier in the chapter. And here is where he mentions that the thing you're wiping with needs to be dry. Because if it has water on it or in it, then it would not meet this condition, which is that no water can touch the area that you intend to wipe. That includes if the thing you're wiping with itself is the thing that has the water. Okay, so you can't use a tool that is moist. Also, he's continuing now, giving more conditions for the stones to be valid and sufficient. He says also it must be no less than 3 wipes. So once you have all of these criteria met, that the stone, it meets the 5 criteria, and the details of the exit that you're going to wipe on and the filth that came out, those criteria are met. The filth hasn't dried. It hasn't settled, then moved again. It hasn't moved beyond its exit area. No water has touched it and no outside filth has touched it. If all of those criteria are met, then that means you're in a situation where you can use stones, and stones alone are going to be sufficient. Stones alone will be sufficient for you in that situation. But he's saying here, you have to wipe at least 3 times. Because if you wipe with the toilet paper just once, then your istinja is not valid. And if you wipe twice, your istinja is not valid. And if you wipe 3 times, well, then at that point, you've hit the minimum number of wipes. Okay, because you have to wipe at least 3 times. It says if the area isn't cleaned, meaning if after wiping 3 times, you still haven't removed all of the filth, it says that it is obligatory to continue until it is clean. Okay, so let's say you wipe 3 times, but there's still some filth there. What does it mean? It means you have to continue wiping. You have to continue wiping in that case. And once you've removed all of the filth, well then, your istinja is complete and it's valid. How do you know if you have removed all the filth? At what point do we say you're done? At what point do you say you've cleaned the area with a stone? We say it's clean once you've removed so much of the filth that the only thing that remains of it is something that could only be removed by water or with small pieces of clay. Okay, so basically we're talking about the color, the taste, and the smell. Because the color, taste, and smell, you need water to remove it. If you're just wiping with toilet paper or wiping with rocks or something like that, the taste, color, and smell are not going to get removed entirely. Okay, the physical, tangible filth can be removed, but the traces will not be removed. And that's why you're not required to remove them, because stones and things that are like stones are not able to remove them. But these traces, the way the scholars define it, we say the things that can only be removed by water or by small pieces of pottery, like clay pottery. Okay, so you wipe until the point where wiping is not going to wipe anything more off. Basically, that's how long you keep wiping. And so if after 3 wipes, you could still continue to remove more filth by wiping, then you would continue wiping until that toilet paper comes up white. All right. If you keep wiping with the toilet paper and there's still something on it every time you wipe, well, then you keep wiping. Once that toilet paper looks the same after you wiped as it looked before you wiped, at that point we say you're finished. It's clean. What happens if you got your area clean with the first wipe? The first time you wiped the toilet paper, it came back clean. So your area is clean. It has no filth on it. Does that mean you don't need to do istinja? No, that's not what it means, because something moist came out. So you have to do istinja. Does that mean your one wipe counts as istinja because it's clean? No, because you have to wipe at least 3 times. So if one wipe was enough to clean the area, you have to wipe a second time and a third time, because one of the conditions is that you wiped 3 or more times. 1 time is not sufficient. 2 times also is not sufficient. Let's keep going. He says it is recommended. Okay, so now everything up until there pertain to obligations and conditions. Right? Everything in the chapter up until that word clean right there are things that are required for your istinja to be valid. Now he's going to start talking about things that are recommended. These things he's about to mention, these things aren't required, but they're sunnah. So you want to make sure you do them. He says it is recommended to use an odd number of wipes. So 3 is the minimum. So let's say you wiped 3 times and you found that it wasn't clean yet. So you wiped a 4th time and the 4th time made it clean. Do you stop? Do you stop right there and just say to yourself, well, it was at least 3 wipes and the area is clean, so therefore I did what I had to do? Or do you go ahead and wipe a 5th time anyway, even though it's not necessary? Do you go ahead and wipe a 5th time just so that your number of wipes will be an odd number? Yes, that's what you do. All right, it's sunnah. It's recommended to use an odd number of wipes, but it's not required. What's required is to clean the area with 3 or more wipes. It says, and to encompass all the area with the stone. What does that mean? It means that when you're wiping, make sure you wipe the entire area of the exit. Okay, sometimes the filth doesn't cover the entire area, but it's sunnah for you to wipe the entire area anyway. Okay, and some scholars interpret this particular sunnah to mean you wipe the entire area with each stone. So say you're using toilet paper. Your first wipe, you should wipe the whole area. The second wipe, you should wipe the whole area. The third wipe, you should also wipe the entire area on every single wipe. This is how some people interpret it. But it's also possible to interpret it in other ways. He then says, and to use the left hand. So among the sunnahs of istinja is that you do all of this with your left hand. Okay, so you should not be cleaning filth with your right hand. Your right hand is used for eating, used for shaking hands, used for good things. Okay, things that are filthy and dirty, you want to use your left hand for those things. He says, and mainly the middle finger in the back area if using water. So if you're cleaning your rear exit with water, then it's recommended not only to use the left hand, but to let the middle finger of the left hand be the one that does most of the wiping if you're using water. Obviously, if you're using stones or toilet paper, then it's going to be the stone that's doing the wiping. He continues, he says, it is recommended. Yeah, this sentence is worded very weirdly. My copy says it is recommended to start with water for the frontal. But what he's trying to say is it is recommended, if using water, to start with the front. Okay, what he's trying to say here is, remember, you have these 2 options to do istinja. You can do istinja with water, or you can do istinja with stones, right? What he's saying here is, if you are going to do istinja with water, then you should use the water on your front exit first and use water on the rear exit second. Why should you start with the front exit? Because doing it the other way is risky. If you start with the rear exit, wiping your feces first, and then wash your front exit second, it's possible that some filth from your rear might be on your hand when you wash your front. Okay, and you don't want to be moving filth from your rear to your front exit. Okay, that's not something that you want to do. So it's better, definitely, if you're using water, to do the front first and do the back second. But if you're using stones, it's the opposite. If you're using stones, it's recommended to start with the back and then do the front second. Why is that? It's because one of the conditions of using stones is that whatever filth came out of your body, you have to use the stones before that filth dries. And feces dries faster than urine does. So because it's a condition that you do the wiping before the stuff that came out dries, you want to start with the rear exit to make sure you wipe away that feces before it dries. And you'll usually have time after that to then wipe away the urine in the front, which probably won't be dry because it takes longer for urine to dry. What's next? He says it is recommended to carry this out before wudu. Okay, so we mentioned at the beginning of the chapter that istinja is an obligation to do, but it doesn't have to be done immediately. It just has to be done before you're going to make salat, or maybe before you contaminate something. What that means is it does not necessarily have to be done before you make wudu. It's possible, if someone is careful, that they could go to the bathroom and then after that make wudu, and then after making wudu, they could do their istinja and then go pray. Because it is possible to do istinja without breaking wudu in the process. So a person could do wudu first and istinja afterwards, but he's saying here it's recommended to do the istinja first and the wudu after the istinja. And it's recommended, he says, and to wipe one's hand with earth, then to wash it. Okay, so after you finish your istinja, it's recommended for you to, this is sort of assuming you're like out in the wilderness, going to the bathroom. After you do istinja, it's recommended for you to take that left hand that you cleaned yourself with and wipe it on the ground. Wipe dirt on it. And then after you wipe dirt on it, then you take water and you wash your hand. Okay, so you wipe earth on your hand first, and then after that, you wash your hand with water. Then he says afterwards. If you read the sentence, it says, and to wipe one's hand with earth, then to wash it afterwards. Afterwards here, it means after the istinja. He's not saying you wipe your hand with earth, and then after that, you wash the hand. Afterwards here, that's not what it means. It means you wipe your hand with earth, and then after that, you wash your hand with water, and you do that process, the wiping with the earth and then the washing with the water, you do that whole process afterwards, like after you completed the istinja. And he says it is recommended to sprinkle one's parts. By parts, he means one's private parts, like the area around your front exit and or the area around your back exit. He says it's recommended to sprinkle one's parts and inner clothes with water. So after you urinate, for example, and after you've done istinja, you should put some water on your fingers and fling some water on your front exit and in your underclothes. Why is it recommended to do that? Because now you have drops of water on your body and in your clothes. And so if you later, say a few minutes afterwards, if you feel something wet, if you feel like a drop of something in your clothes, you're now going to be uncertain. Is this drop that I just felt because a drop of urine just came out? Or is that just one of the sprinkles of water that I put in there? You're not going to be sure what the source of that feeling is. And because you're unsure, you do not conclude that it's definitely urine. There's doubt about the source of it. And so remember the rule: what you know for certain cannot be overruled by something there's doubtful of, something you're doubtful about. So if you went to the bathroom and you made istinja and you sprinkled and then you made wudu, for example, and now you're going towards the masjid and you feel a wet spot in your underwear, you do not say, oh no, I just broke my wudu. You say, well, I know for sure that I made wudu, and I don't know for sure that I broke wudu, because this wetness I feel, it could be from the water. This is why it's recommended to sprinkle water in your underclothes after your istinja, because this will make room for doubt and ultimately make your life a lot easier. And then he closes the chapter with a special dua, which you should say after you make istinja, keeping in mind that you don't want to say this dua in the place where you went to the bathroom. Okay, remember, it's recommended to go to the bathroom in one place and then go make istinja at a different place. Most of us nowadays don't do that. Most of us, we sit on a toilet, we use the bathroom there, and we make istinja there. But you want to not say this dua until you are away from the place where you went to the bathroom. And what is this dua? You want to say, Allahumma طهر قلبي من النفاق وحسن فرجي من الفواحش, which means, O Allah, purify my heart from hypocrisy and protect my parts from the evil practices. I find this particular dua very easy to remember because it relates to what you did, right? You did istinja for what reason? Purification. And the dua starts off with, Oh Allah, purify. What? My heart. So just as you purified your private parts by doing istinja, you're asking Allah to purify a part that's far more important, your heart. And to purify it from what? Hypocrisy. Okay, because we want to be people of sincerity, not people of hypocrisy. And where's the place that you washed? It's your private parts, right? So you also ask Allah to protect your private parts from perversion, right? From the wicked things that a person might do with their private parts. You're asking for protection from sins of the private parts. Wa sallallahu ala Sayyidina Muhammad wa ala alihi wa sahbihi wa sallam. If you have questions, write them in the box. Give me a second. I'll come back to answer them. Assalamu alaikum. Let me look through the questions. I think I saw a few during the lesson. Let me see here. Wa alaikum assalam wa rahmatullahi ta'ala to those who salamed me. Someone said anything which is fluid must be cleaned with water. No, that's not what I'm saying. If a person urinates, urine is a fluid. Urine can be cleaned with stones. Okay, but the condition is that the stone has to be dry And you have to wipe before the urine has dried. You have to wipe while the urine is still wet. Okay, you have to wipe while the urine is still wet. We're not saying you can only clean liquids with water. Although that would be true, though, for cases other than istinja. But for istinja, no. If urine or blood comes out, you can wipe it with stones. Okay, but the stone has to be dry, and you have to do the wiping before that urine or that blood dries up. Oh, so I cannot type the dua in the chat. Unfortunately, the nature of like this tool that I'm using for the class, I can't type any comments. I can type it on this page though. Why don't I do that? The dua is Allahumma. This capital T is for the hard T. Tahir qalbi min al-nifaq wa hassin. Capital H means the hard H. Capital S means the hard S. Wa hassin farji. Actually, qalbi. I'm going to put two E's just so you know it's like qalbi, not qalbi. Allahumma tahhir qalbi min al-nifaq wa hassin farji min al-fawahish. And again, the capital H means hard H. The dua is here in blue. Allahumma tahhir qalbi min al-nifaq wa hassin farji min al-fawahish. Allahumma tahhir qalbi min al-nifaq wa hassin farji min al-fawahish. Oh, mashallah. Is anyone here in this lesson in the fire area of California right now? Well, I definitely ask Allah to send mercy upon any Muslims living in the fire-stricken area of California, for sure. I ask Allah to break this particular hardship which He's placed there and to grant them patience. And may Allah send help to any who need it. And I ask Allah to make this event a cause for kafirs there to embrace Islam. Insha'Allahu ta'ala. Somebody asked a question. How can you have or be in wudu without an istinja? Easily. Because when you have wudu, we saw a couple lessons ago that there are only 4 things that break wudu, right? If something comes out of one of the 2 exits, except for semen, that breaks wudu. Losing consciousness breaks wudu. Touching someone of the opposite sex skin to skin with all those details breaks wudu. And touching your private part with the inside part of your hand without a barrier breaks wudu. Okay, those are the 4 things that break wudu. Okay, so now we're talking about a case where someone went to the bathroom, they urinated or defecated, which of course broke their wudu. After that, they made wudu, which means now they have wudu because they made wudu. All right, and then after the wudu, they did istinja. It's possible to do istinja without breaking the wudu, as long as you don't do any of those 4 things. Like, for example, say the person was wearing gloves. when he made his wudu. So he did not touch his private part with the inside part of his hand. Okay, this is something that's possible. I mean, it's not normal to do it this way, but it is possible. Okay, this is one thing I need, all of us to practice. When we study Islamic law, study the actual wording of the law. A lot of us, what do? We come to these classes and we have in our minds the way we normally do it or the way other people normally do it. And the Sharia is broader than what's normal. Yes, there's a normal way for us to do it, but even abnormal ways might still be acceptable. So learn what the rule is instead of just picturing what's normal. Picture the actual rules. Okay, we learned the 4 things that break wudu. Is it possible to do what's on your screen right now? Is it possible to do an istinja with water or with stones in a way that you don't do any of the 4 things that break your wudu? Yes, it's possible. It's possible. Okay. The person also said, but you have najis on your private area. Well, having najis on your private area doesn't break wudu. It will invalidate your salat. So you can't make salat until your private area is clean. But having najis filth on your private area is separate and independent and irrelevant to the question of wudu. Okay, remember, wudu is there to remove what? Wudu removes minor hadath. Wudu does not remove najis. Okay, the purpose of wudu is not removing najis. Wudu is there to remove hadath. Najis is something else, and there are its own other processes for removing najis, such as istinja, such as washing. Okay, now for your salat, you have to be clear of hadath and also clear of najis. So you need to have wudu and you need to have made istinja in order to make salat. But wudu and istinja are 2 different things that have 2 different purposes and are done in 2 different ways. So don't conflate things that need to be kept separate. Okay? I know this is tricky. A lot of us who haven't studied Islamic law, we associate one thing with another thing, but I need us to try to break those associations. Okay, the trick to understanding the sacred law is drawing distinctions where the distinctions should be drawn. And the errors that people make typically come from confusing things. Things that should be kept separate, they didn't keep them separate. It takes practice, inshallah. But what's good is continue to ask the questions. Because questions like this, inshallah, help you see, help you understand. Someone asked, are you saying one can pray without using water? Well, what do you mean by using water? Obviously, you need water to make wudu. But when it comes to istinja, yes, you can use simply stones to clean your private areas after going to the bathroom. And your wudu, and if you do that, then your salat will still be valid. Someone asked, does a woman make istinja with water if she is menstruating? She can if she wants to. But when a woman is menstruating, it's, if she washes at all, it's just for hygiene, for cleanliness. It's not for ritual purification. It's not for a religious act of worship, such as wudu or istinja. This is not why she would do it if she's menstruating. Because while she's menstruating, she cannot make salat. And she can't make salat until after she does a ghusl. So she's going to, in the process of the ghusl, she's going to end up cleaning everything. So istinja prior to the ghusl is not required by the religion, although you're free to do it if you want to, just for hygiene purposes. Sure. And if you don't want to make istinja with water, sure, she could also wipe away the blood with tissues or something, if that's what she chooses to do. But while she's menstruating, since she doesn't need to make salat and doesn't need to make tawaf, and wouldn't be allowed to do those things anyway, there isn't really there's not religiously a point in her making istinja. But, just for hygiene purposes, sure. Go ahead. MashaAllah, sister said her masjid burned down. Well, I ask that Allah make easy for the community there to build a new masjid, and may the new masjid be a source of blessings for everyone, and may your numbers grow, insha'Allah ta'ala. Yeah, I honestly don't know what it's like over there. I've never lived in a place that was prone to wildfires, but I've seen some pictures, and it certainly seems like them fires are big and really out of control, mashallah. I have a couple friends also who live out there who have lost their homes. And I have some family that lives out there that, alhamdulillah, they haven't lost their homes, but, they're very close to where the fires are. So definitely I ask Allah to protect the Muslims out there, and to reward them for their patience, and to provide for them what they need, insha'Allah ta'ala. And if there's no other questions, then let's say La ilaha illallah. La ilaha illallah. La ilaha illallah. La ilaha illallah. Allahumma salli ala Sayyidina Muhammad wa ala alihi wa sahbihi wa sallim. Allahumma salli ala Sayyidina Muhammad wa ala alihi wa sahbihi wa sallim. Allahumma salli ala Sayyidina Muhammad wa ala alihi wa sahbihi wa sallim. رب اغفر لي وللمؤمنين والمؤمنات رب اغفر لي وللمؤمنين والمؤمنات رب اغفر لي وللمؤمنين والمؤمنات. بارك الله فيكم. I'll see you next week, insha'Allah ta'ala. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi ta'ala wa barakatuh.